around this time, while Britain is also, you know they are also learning, the US has stepped up its involvement after Roosevelt won his election in 1940 pretty convincingly as well. uh, the US actually extended the Pan American zone. They kind of like removed bits and pieces of the Neutrality Act to kind of give Britain what do you call like the Lend-Lease, right, as Roosevelt created, which actually Britain, I might add, despised, because it was actually a pretty shitty deal for Britain. So because they got like the mothball destroyers for 99-year-old leases on various bases, but the British were like was so bad, like the destroyers, that they actually had to spend a lot of time just overhauling those destroyers before they would be in service, because they were like part of that rapid buildup of the American Navy in World War I. But it would definitely help, because they're not going to be the frontline destroyers of the British and United States navies that are going to be in the prime zones of combat, because that's where you want to put your best horses. And one thing you gotta admit, the way Roosevelt sold the idea of this Lend Lease to the public, considering a Neutrality Act was in place, and opinion was still like while very sympathetic and supportive for Britain, it is still anti-war. Just the way he sells it as a case of lending a fire hose to a neighbor whose house is burning down, and you just want your hose back, you don't want anything else from your neighbor. It's actually a pretty simple rhetoric in a way that most people can relate to, that actually helps, and it's pretty charming in its own way.
I mean, they had to approach what I will call a hostile public because the public adamantly did not want to be in this war. And Roosevelt could not unsee the irony of facing the exact same situation that Wilson was facing. And I think that Roosevelt didn't want to be Wilson in a lot of ways. So, you know,
Yeah.
he was doing what he could to ease the Americans' feet into the
And
water, you know?
also just start having the base set up for the production. We talk about the United States industrial strength, but the wheels had already been turning for almost like 1.5 years before their official entry into the war.
Yeah.
So there was already a sort of state of readiness, which was not there in World War I. If they just completely started, like the momentum was only going to start, like, say, after Pearl Harbor, who knows how long would it have taken for the US to start harnessing its power, because it's not just like you snap your fingers and you're suddenly at a war economy.
Yeah, but we are, as many are aware, Roosevelt was basically doing the same playbook that Woodrow did in World War I, where he was placing these. He was basically making it certain that something would happen in the Atlantic that would drag
uh
America into World War
no,
II.